Always a long period at the beginning of a live stream, which you're wondering, is anybody actually going to click on this live stream? Can people hear me? Is it working? What's going on? Did I choose the wrong time? So, as it says in the show notes down below, I didn't get a chance to film my Saturday HodgePodge because I was traveling to see my daughter, my son-in-law, for a thing they were doing. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. For a thing they were doing on Thursday. And so I was out of town during my normal filming time. And so I thought I'd just do a live stream real quick to kind of do the things I would have done, particularly the bookish things I would have done as a part of my Saturday HodgePodge. Hey, Karen, how are you? First of all, I did get new shelves. So I'm going to turn the camera. I don't have a lot of books on them over there. I didn't get new shelves. And one of the great things about the live stream is even though you can't see the new shelves, you can't also see, because the way the camera works, you also can't see what a nightmare my study room where I have my bookshelves and other things are. I always think it looks a little bit better somehow on the live stream camera than it does on the regular camera. But I did get new shelves. I only have one of the boxes set up with books. Went to IKEA on my birthday, which was the Sunday the 13th. My wife and I picked out new shelves and got them put in here a couple of days ago, and I'm getting ready to transfer books. You can't see the top box right there, thank goodness, because that's where the first set of books got, just to make sure that the boxes from IKEA were the same size as these, and I'd be able to get as many books on there as I have here. I'm also not one of those bookshelf tour people. Thanks, Karen. I had a really good birthday. It was really nice. So I probably will never actually do a bookshelf tour because I find those things to be a little bit not my thing. But I also wanted to just talk real quickly about the books that I read, because unlike every other week this month, I had a pretty good reading week where I finished up a lot of stuff. Probably the most exciting thing for me to finish up was I did finally finish up Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree. I've been reading this, I think, since April or May. I've been reading this book for a long time, and it really wasn't necessarily the kind of book that's for me. That's kind of what I decided when I got to the end of it, that Tomb of Sand is not a me book. There's something about the way in which it's written and the way in which it works, which I found to be kind of overwhelming and which I found to be really irritating. And so this is the book that I was reading, which, had me contemplating DNFing and what DNFing meant. And whether or not I would be, whether or not DNFing was good or not. And I think one of the arguments I made against DNFing was that, if you don't read to the end, you don't know if stuff's going to be introduced at the end that are things that would tie the story together, or things that would make things make sense, or things that would bring it all together for you. And I have to be honest with you, this book is a perfect example of that happening. The first many hundred pages are really just kind of setting up this really rich world in which the main character, who is an Indian woman around the age of 80, lives, and her kids and her friends and beliefs and customs. And there's a fair bit of what, we in the West would call magical realism, but which probably is better just kind of defined as spiritualism in the book. Good morning. How are you, Kristen? And so there was things like that don't bother me, but it just seemed like the book wasn't going anywhere, that it was just kind of spiraling through these kind of rich stories and descriptions and things that, I had a hard time keeping track of. And I'll also point out one of my problems, you may know, with Russian literature is how many names everybody has. Characters in this book are referred to as all kinds of different things, which I found to be confusing. And when I started the last section, the book's divided into sections. The last section is about 150 pages. When I started the last section, I thought, I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this. This doesn't make any sense to me. And then all of a sudden, the author does this thing where she begins to pull all the threads together. And really what the book is about, I think, is about partition, about the partition of India and Pakistan and the cultural and human trauma and tragedies that ensued, and how that still kind of has an impact on people living in both countries today, or at least on the cultures of both countries at some point. And I think that that's kind of the backdrop of this. And I think it worked. That part worked really well. Now, is this a book that I could recommend to readers like me? On the whole, I would probably say no. If you're into the books that are really rich on detail and description, and are kind of meandering in plot and have a lot of characters. Also, I just say that the author's style is at times incredibly engaging, where the story is being told from multiple points of view, or from chapters are told from different people's points of view, some of whom are characters, and some of whom really aren't. Uh, if that's for you, then this is a great book, and I can see why it won the International Book Award. It's just not, I don't think, a book that's really for me. Sorry, second cup of coffee time. So I did finish it. I'm happy I read it, and I'm glad that I didn't DNF it. The other book I've been reading most of the month is Collected Works by Lydia Sandgren, translated from Swedish by Agnes Brume. And I really liked this book. Now, I saw this book on Sean the Book Maniac's channel first, and he really, really loved it. And I'm not surprised that Sean liked it probably a little bit more than me, because this is really a book that's about characters. There is a plot, and the plot itself has elements of a mystery to it, but it really is a character study on three characters. One, I think, a little bit more than the other two, but really kind of a study of characters, and the characters are really rich and really fully developed. There are three characters: Martin, who is a publisher who in his youth had dreams of being a novelist and a writer; Gustav, who is a painter who achieves a tremendous amount of critical and, to a certain extent, financial success; and Cecilia, who is an academic who marries Martin. And it's a story about the relationship between those three people, and then also involves the children of Martin and Cecilia. And even though this is a 600-page book, I really can't talk about the ending, I think, without prejudicing people who may want to read it about the book. I've seen all kinds of people express all kinds of opinions about the book. And if you are, what I will say as best I can is, if you are a person who is really a plot reader, and plot is what you read for, then I'm not sure this is a book that's worth the 600 pages for you. If you are a reader who likes character and relationships between characters, and good writing, and kind of interesting structure to a book, not really experimental, but kind of interesting structure to a book, with a narrator who seems to kind of almost be a part of the story without ever actually being part of the story, then I think this is a really good book. And since it was about writing and creative people, it's kind of in my wheelhouse for the kind of book story that I like to read. And so I finished it. I was really happy to finish it. I really enjoyed it. It really was a book that had me thinking about all kinds of things, particularly about relationships and friendships. I think I said early on, I think I said early on that that I identified with the character of Martin, and I kind of regret saying that, because I think he ends up being a not incredibly admirable character, but I think he's incredibly human. And there are some of the negative qualities of Martin that I see in myself as well. Let's see. Kristen says, I'm ready to go to get coffee with a girl I used to babysit, who is now a grown but adult with a house, cats, etc. She's going to free bookstore by me and asked if I wanted to go to coffee. That sounds great, Kristen. I hope you have fun reminiscing and not feeling, well, like I would feel, or like I feel when I see my ex-students who are grown-ups now with, kids, etc. But so, Martin's not wholly admirable, but I think he's incredibly human. And one of the things I think that's best about this book is that all the characters are flawed, that all the characters do things which are questionable, that there are no hero characters in the book. Martin is the focus. And as a woman writing about a man, I know a lot of men would suspect that, he is going to be the villain in the story in some ways. And there are definitely things he does which are really cringy, like, oh my God, that's horrible. But I think it's balanced with some of the things that that Cecilia does, and some of the things that Gustav does, and kind of understanding about the relationship. So I thought it was a really rich really good read. I don't think I liked it as much as Sean, but I will go back and be thinking about it a lot and seeing where it ends up on my books of the year list. So those are the two books I did finish reading this week. You're probably also aware that this is Faulkner in August, and I'm one of the people who does that. So I have been reading Faulkner's Absalom. Absalom. I haven't picked up the last section today. I got about 100 pages left, but this has been a really enjoyable reread. I think this is Faulkner's best book, but it will never probably be my favorite because it is, I think, far more difficult to read than even The Sound and the Fury, which I think has the reputation for being really difficult to read. But it's a really rich, really rewarding reading experience. And, if you read it and you don't think Faulkner's some kind of a writing literary genius, then what I would say is you're never going to like or appreciate Faulkner's work. But it certainly would not be. It certainly would not be a book that I think is where you should start with Faulkner. Kristen, which Faulkner books have you read? Have you read As I Lay Dying, and have you read The Sound and the Fury? I think that probably this should be the third of those kind of really stream of consciousness, complicated books that you read. I will say that The Sound of the Fury starts off and can be far more frustrating to start reading than Absalom. But I think having read that one, this book makes more sense in terms of its theme, in terms of its writing style. So I would definitely read The Sound and the Fury before I read Absalom. That's just my opinion. To me, those are the three really big stream of consciousness novels that Faulkner writes, even though that stream of consciousness appears in lots of his work. But this might not be the next one I go to after As I Lay Dying. But if you've read As I Lay Dying, then you kind of know Faulkner's stream of consciousness style, and so it might work perfectly well for you. But just my opinion, I would try The Sound of the Fury, and if you can get through the first section or so of that, then and finish it, then I think this would be a good next. And then you kind of get the three big Faulkner books out of the way. The three big kind of difficult Faulkner books, I think, can be gotten out of the way. And then you can decide if you want to go on and read, Faulkner that's not so much stream of consciousness. It's also Garb August, so I've been trying to read garbagey books. You may know that I read the Susanna Hoffs novel, This Bird Has Flown, and I found it to be enjoyable. I think that's how I describe it. Far from perfect, not a great literary work. It probably fits really well in the Garb August theme. But my other Garb August pick was, and this, sorry for the disturbing cover this early in the morning, is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which I started reading yesterday morning while waiting for donuts at my daughter's house. And I have to say, this is just a whole lot of fun, which is what it's designed to be. It's just a book that's designed to be fun, and it works in that way. I will say that really all I'm reading for right now is to see how zombies get worked into the story. Clearly, the author here is familiar with Pride and Prejudice, and is following the basic plot line of Pride and Prejudice and the basic characteristics of the character of Pride and Prejudice, but throwing in martial arts and zombie killing along the way. It's a gruesome cover. But really enjoyable to read so far, and so I've been having fun with that. So let's see. I think that's pretty much it. I don't want to necessarily cut anything too short, but I wasn't looking to make a really long live video this morning. I appreciate everybody who stopped by and left a comment. As always, thank you. And if you watch this video later after the live's over, look forward to your comments in the comment section below. Thank you, Karen, Kristen, everybody who stopped by. I really appreciate it. Talk to you guys later.